If someone had told me the only time I saw her soften was when she thought no one was watching, I would have kept that observation to myself. Imagine this. You're on your phone on a Friday night joking with friends about office crushes. When you accidentally send the most humiliating text of your life to the one person who should never see it, your icy, untouchable boss. What would you do? Run? Resign? Vanish off the face of the earth? Maya Delgado was sure her career was finished the moment she hit send on that mistaken message. But sometimes the universe has other ideas. Sometimes the moment that feels like your worst mistake is actually the start of something extraordinary. Before we jump into this incredible story of unexpected love and professional growth, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tap that notification bell. And tell me in the comments what's the most embarrassing text you've ever sent by accident. I bet it wasn't as life-changing as Mania's. Now, let me tell you about the night that changed everything for a young woman in Boston who was about to discover that falling in love isn't always a mistake. My name is Maya Delgado, and I'm about to tell you the story of how one stupid text message changed my entire life. I was 26, working as a junior marketing assistant at Harrington and Associates, one of Boston's most prestigious advertising firms. The kind of place where everyone wore designer suits and spoke in business jargon that made my head spin. I loved my job, don't get me wrong. The energy, the creativity, the rush of landing a big client, but there was one tiny problem that made my stomach churn every single day. Evelyn King, picture the most intimidating woman you can imagine. Now multiply that by 10. That was my boss. 39 years old with steel gray eyes that could freeze you mid-sentence and a reputation for being absolutely untouchable. She was brilliant. I'll give her that. Under her leadership, our firm had become the most successful in the New England. But working for her felt like walking on thin ice while juggling flaming torches. Evelyn never raised her voice. She didn't need to. One look from her could make grown men reconsider their career choices. She arrived at 7 sharp every morning, left at exactly 6:30, and in between she was pure business perfection. I'd been working there for 8 months, and I'd probably exchanged maybe 50 words with her. Most of them were, "Yes, Miss King, and I'll handle it immediately." That Friday started like any other. Boston was in the middle of a brutal winter, the kind that makes you question why anyone ever thought living in this city was a good idea. I was wrapping up a presentation for Monday when my friend Tori texted me about her latest dating disaster. "Another one bites the dust," she wrote. "Why are all the good ones either taken or my boss?" I laughed out loud in my cubicle. Poor Turai had been crushing on her supervisor for months despite knowing it was career suicide. I started typing back without really thinking about it. If I ever fall in love again, I hope it's not with my boss. I hit send and immediately went back to my presentation. The office was emptying out. People heading home for the weekend. I could hear the cleaning crews starting their rounds on the floor below. The familiar sounds of Friday evening freedom. That's when my phone buzzed. One new message. I glanced at it casually, expecting Torai's response. Instead, I saw a name that made my blood turn to ice water. Evelyn King, then fall properly. Time stopped. I swear to God, time actually stopped. I stared at my phone screen until my eyes started watering. Read the message again and again, each time hoping the words would magically rearrange themselves into something, anything else. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. I frantically scrolled up through my recent messages. There it was, clear as day. Instead of sending my joke to Torai, I'd send it directly to my boss, to Evelyn King, to the woman who could fire me with one sentence, and probably would. My hands started shaking. My chest felt tight. I could hear my heartbeat pounding in my ears like a war drum. How do you accidentally text your boss about falling in love with your boss? How is that even possible? I stared at her response again, then fall properly. What did that even mean? Was she being sarcastic? Was she mocking me? Was this her way of telling me to start updating my resume? The office was almost empty now. I could see Evelyn's corner office from my desk, and the lights were still on. She was probably in there right now deciding exactly how to destroy my career. Maybe she was calling HR. Maybe she was already drafting my termination letter. I grabbed my coat and bag and practically ran to the elevator. I needed to get out of there before she decided to summon me for an impromptu firing session. The elevator ride down felt eternal. 37 floors of pure panic. Outside, the Boston wind hit me like a slap in the face. People were hurrying past, bundled up against the cold, heading to bars and restaurants for their Friday night plans. Normal people with normal lives who didn't just accidentally confess workplace crushes to their terrifying bosses. Wait, did I have a workplace crush? I stopped walking. Right there on the sidewalk, while snow started to fall around me, I had to ask myself the question I've been avoiding for 8 months. Did I have feelings for Evelyn King? She was beautiful. Obviously, even I could admit that. Tall and elegant with dark hair that was always perfectly styled and those incredible gray eyes. She had this way of commanding a room that was actually kind of mesmerizing. And when she smiled, which was rare, it was like watching the sun come out after a storm. But she was my boss. My cold, distant, completely untouchable boss who probably saw me as just another disposable employee. The idea of having romantic feelings for her was absurd, ridiculous, career-ending. So why did my heart race every time she walked past my desk? I made it home to my tiny apartment and spent the entire weekend in a state of complete panic. I analyzed that text message from every possible angle. Then fall properly. 3 words that can mean absolutely anything or nothing at all. Maybe she was telling me to be more careful about who I dated. Maybe she was giving me relationship advice. Maybe she was being completely sarcastic, and Monday morning would bring a pink slip to my desk. By Sunday night, I convinced myself that my career was over. I'd have to move back home with my parents. I have to explain to everyone why I got fired from my dream job because of a stupid text message about love. But deep down, underneath all the panic and fear, there was something else. Something I didn't want to admit even to myself. When I read her message again that Sunday night, sitting in my kitchen with a cup of tea growing cold in my hands, I felt something that had nothing to do with terror. I felt hope, then fall properly. What if she wasn't firing me? What if she was challenging me? What if Evelyn King, the most intimidating woman in Boston, was actually telling me that if I was going to fall in love with my boss, I should do it right? The thought was so crazy, so impossible that I almost laughed out loud. But as I stared at my phone screen, reading those 3 words for the 100th time, I couldn't shake the feeling that Monday morning was going to be very interesting. I had no idea how right I was. My name is Maya Delgado, and I'm about to tell you the story of how one absolutely mortifying text message changed my entire life in ways I never could have imagined. I was 26 years old working as a junior marketing assistant at Harrington and Associates, one of Boston's most prestigious advertising firms. The kind of place where everyone wore designer suits that cost more than my monthly rent and spoken business jargon that made my head spin like a carnival ride. I genuinely loved my job. Don't get me wrong. The creative energy, the fast-paced environment, the rush of landing a major client and seeing your ideas come to life in glossy campaigns. But there was one tiny, enormous problem that made my stomach churn with anxiety every single day. Evelyn King. Evelyn. Picture the most intimidating woman you can possibly imagine. Now multiply that by 10,000. That was my boss. 39 years old with steel gray, eyes that could freeze you mid-sentence, and a reputation for being absolutely, completely, utterly untouchable. She was brilliant. I'll give her that. Under her ruthless leadership, our firm had become the most successful advertising agency in the New England. But working for her felt like walking on thin ice while juggling flaming torches in a hurricane. Evelyn never raised her voice. She didn't need to. One perfectly timed look from those piercing gray eyes could make grown men with 20 years of experience reconsider their career choices. She arrived at the office at 7 sharp every morning, left at exactly 6:30 in the evening. And in between those 11 and 1/2 hours, she was pure business perfection. No small talk, no personal conversations, no warmth whatsoever. I'd been working at Harrington and Associates for 8 months, and I probably exchanged maybe 50 actual words with her. Most of them were variations of, "Yes, Miss King, I'll handle it immediately, and the presentation is ready for your review." She existed in her glass corner office like some kind of untouchable ice queen. And I existed in my little cubicle, trying not to mess up badly enough to attract her terrifying attention. That particular Friday started exactly like any other. Boston was in the middle of a brutal winter, the kind that makes you question why anyone in their right mind ever thought living in this frozen wasteland was a good idea. Snow had been falling since morning, turning the city into a beautiful but miserable winter wonderland. I was wrapping up a presentation for Monday's client meeting when my friend Tori texted me about her latest dating disaster. "Another one bites the dust," she wrote, followed by a series of crying, laughing emojis. Seriously, why are all the good ones either taken, crazy, or my boss? I literally laughed out loud in my cubicle, earning strange looks from my few remaining colleagues. Poor Tori had been harboring a massive crush on our supervisor for months, despite knowing it was complete career suicide. She worked at a law firm downtown Boston where office romances were about as welcome as a plague of locusts. I started typing back without really thinking about it, my fingers moving automatically while my brain was still focused on the presentation slides spread across my desk. If I ever fall in love again, I hope it's not with my boss. I hit send and immediately went back to my work, completely absorbed in adjusting font sizes and checking for typos. The office was slowly emptying out around me. People grabbing their coats and heading home for the weekend. I could hear the familiar sounds of Friday evening freedom. Elevators ding, keyboards clicking one last time, the cleaning crew starting their rounds on the floor below us. That's when my phone buzzed. One new message. I glanced at it casually, expecting Tori's witty response about our mutual bad luck with men. Instead, I saw a name that made my blood turn to ice water and my heart stop beating entirely. Evelyn King. Then fall properly. Time stopped. I swear on everything holy. Time actually stopped moving. I stared at my phone screen until my eyes started watering from not blinking. I read the message again and one more time. Each reading, hoping desperately that the words would magically rearrange themselves into something. Anything else that made sense. Oh God. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. With growing horror, I frantically scrolled up through my recent text conversations. There it was, clear as day and twice as mortifying. Instead of sending my stupid joke to Tori like I intended, I'd send it directly to my boss, to Evelyn King, to the most intimidating woman in Boston who could fire me with one sentence, and probably would. My hands started shaking uncontrollably. My chest felt tight, like someone was squeezing my lungs with giant fists. I could hear my heartbeat pounding in my ears like a war drum announcing my professional doom. How do you accidentally text your boss about falling in love with your boss? How is that even humanly possible? I stared at her response again, analyzing every letter, then fall properly. What did that even mean? Was she being sarcastic? Was she mocking me? Was this her ice-cold way of telling me to start updating my resume and preparing for unemployment? The office was almost completely empty now. I could see Evelyn's corner office from my desk, and the lights were still on behind her floor-to-ceiling windows. She was probably in there right now, deciding exactly how to destroy my career. Maybe she was calling HR to report my inappropriate behavior. Maybe she was already drafting my termination letter with that perfect, intimidating handwriting of hers. I grabbed my coat and bag and practically sprinted to the elevator, desperate to escape before she decided to summon me for an impromptu firing session. The elevator ride down 37 floors felt like it lasted approximately 17 years. With every floor the elevator passed, I felt myself dropping closer to unemployment and farther from any chance of salvaging this mess. Outside, the brutal Boston wind slammed into me like a physical blow. People hurried along the sidewalk, bundled against the cold, heading for warm bars and cozy restaurants, off to their normal Friday night plans. Regular people with regular lives, People who didn't accidentally confess workplace crushes to their terrifying bosses via text message. Wait, did I actually have a workplace crush? I stopped right there in the middle of the crowded sidewalk. As snow kept falling around me and annoyed commuters had to swerve around my unmoving body. I finally had to face the question I'd been carefully avoiding for 8 long months. Did I have feelings for Evelyn King? She was undeniably beautiful, obviously. Even I, with my complete lack of romantic experience with women, could admit that. Tall and elegant, with dark hair that was always perfectly arranged, and those incredible gray eyes that seemed to look straight through people. She had this way of owning a room that was honestly mesmerizing to watch. And on the rare occasions when she smiled, it was like watching the sun break through after a brutal storm. But she was my boss. My cold, distant, completely untouchable boss, who probably saw me as just another disposable employee in a long line of them. The idea of having romantic feelings for her was absurd, ridiculous, and completely career-ending. So why did my heart race every single time she walked past my desk? I made it back to my tiny Back Bay apartment and spent the entire weekend in a state of overwhelming panic that could have given anxiety researchers a field day. My studio, which usually felt small but cozy, suddenly turned into a prison cell where I was trapped alone with my spiraling thoughts. Saturday morning, I woke up hoping it had all been some horrible nightmare. Maybe I dreamed the whole thing. Maybe I never sent that text at all. But there it was on my phone, permanent evidence of my stupidity. If I ever fall in love again, I hope it's not with my boss. Sent directly to Evelyn King on Friday evening. And her response, then fall properly. I dissected those 3 words from every conceivable angle my anxious brain could invent. I Googled what does fall properly mean and got results about autumn safety and how to prevent injuries during slips. I consulted my college dictionary. I even called my sister Isabel, who lived in Austin and had no idea about my work situation. What's wrong? You sound like you're having a breakdown, Isabel said when she heard my voice. Hypothetically, I said, pacing around my kitchen table. If someone told you to fall properly, what would that mean to you? Are we talking about literal falling? Like physically falling down? No, like falling in love? If someone said to fall in love properly, what would that mean? There was a long pause. Are you in love with someone? It's hypothetical. No, it's not. You're using your panicky voice. Who is it? Is he treating you badly? Do I need to come to Boston and kick someone's ass? I hung up. Isabel meant well, but she couldn't help me decode the most cryptic message in human history. Sunday was even worse. I went for a walk along Charles River, hoping the cold air would clear my head. Instead, I spent 2 hours imagining different scenarios for Monday morning. In some, Evelyn called me into her office and fired me immediately. In others, she pretended the text never happened and treated me with even more cold professionalism than usual. In the worst ones, she'd already told everyone in the office about my inappropriate message, and I walk in to find them all laughing at me. But there was one scenario I couldn't stop thinking about. No matter how hard I tried to push it away, what if she meant something else entirely? What if then fall properly wasn't a dismissal or mockery, but something else? Sunday night, I sat in my kitchen with a cup of chamomile tea that had grown cold hours ago, staring at my phone for the millionth time. I'd read that message so many times, the words had lost all meaning. But I couldn't stop looking at it. Then fall properly. What if she was challenging me? What if Evelyn King, the most intimidating woman in Boston, was actually telling me that if I was going to fall in love with my boss, I should do it right? The thought was so crazy, so completely impossible that I almost laughed out loud in my empty apartment. But I couldn't shake it. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those steel gray eyes and heard her voice saying words she'd never actually said. In my half-dreams, she was standing in her office doorway, looking at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Something warmer than her usual ice-cold professionalism. Monday morning arrived like an execution date. I got up at 5:30, took the longest shower of my life, and changed my outfit 3 times. I settled on my most professional black dress, the one that made me feel slightly more confident and slightly less like a complete disaster of a human being. The train ride downtown Boston felt eternal. Every stop brought me closer to whatever fresh hell awaited me at Harrington and Associates. I practiced different explanations in my head. It was meant for a friend. My phone was hacked. I was drunk and made a terrible mistake. None of them sounded believable, even to me. I walked into the office at 8:15, 15 minutes later than usual because I'd spent so long standing outside the building gathering courage. The familiar buzz of morning activity felt different somehow. More charged, like everyone could sense the impending drama. I made it to my desk without seeing Evelyn, which felt like a small miracle. Maybe she was running late. Maybe she called in sick. Maybe she decided to work from home to avoid dealing with her inappropriate employee. I turned on my computer and tried to focus on actual work, but concentration was impossible. Every footstep in the hallway made me look up, expecting to see her approaching with security guards and a box for my personal belongings. At 9:30, my phone rang. Internal call. My heart stopped. Maya Delgado. Miss Delgado, please come to my office. Evelyn's voice, calm and professional as always. I'll be right there. The walk to her corner office felt like a death march. Other employees looked up as I passed, and I was convinced they all knew about my text message. Maybe she'd forwarded it to HR as evidence of my unprofessional behavior. Evelyn's office was exactly what you'd expect from someone of her caliber. Floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of downtown Boston. Minimalist furniture that probably cost more than my car and awards covering one entire wall. She was sitting behind her massive desk, looking perfectly put together in a charcoal gray suit that matched her eyes. Close the door and have a seat, she said without looking up from her computer. I closed the door with shaking hands and sat in the chair across from her desk. The same chair where I'd received my last performance review 6 months ago. The same chair where I'd sat when she'd explained the Harrington and Associates dress code on my first day. She finished typing something, saved her document, and finally looked at me. Those gray eyes that had haunted my weekend were impossible to read. Miss Delgado, she began, and I braced myself for professional destruction. Your presentation for the Henderson account was well-researched and creative. I blinked. That was not what I was expecting. The client was impressed with your insights about their target demographic. She continued, Mr. Harrington specifically asked me to commend your work. Thank you, Miss King. I'm glad it was well received. She nodded and returned her attention to her computer screen. I waited for the other shoe to drop, for her to mention the text message that had ruined my weekend and probably my career, but she didn't. Minutes passed in complete silence, except for the sound of her typing. I sat there confused and increasingly uncomfortable, wondering if I was supposed to leave or if she was building up to the main event. Finally, she looked at me again. That will be all, Miss Delgado. That's it. Is there something else you wanted to discuss? Her expression was completely neutral, professional, cold as always. Like Friday night had never happened. Like the most embarrassing text message in human history didn't exist. No, Miss King, thank you. I stood up on unsteady legs and headed for the door. My hand was on the handle when she spoke again. Miss Delgado? I turned back and for just a moment, I could have sworn I saw something different in her eyes. Something that might have been amusement or interest or something else entirely. You have passion, she said quietly. Don't waste it on fear. Then she returned to her computer and I was dismissed. I walked back to my desk in a complete daze. What the hell had just happened? She hadn't fired me. She hadn't even mentioned the text. Instead, she'd complimented my work and given me what sounded almost like personal advice. Don't waste it on fear. I spent the rest of the day analyzing those words almost as obsessively as I'd analyzed her text message response. What does she mean? What kind of passion was she talking about? And why did I feel like something fundamental had shifted between us, even though nothing explicit had been said? That night, I called Turai and told her everything. Well, almost everything. I left out the part about potentially having feelings for my female boss because I wasn't ready to deal with that particular revelation yet. So she basically ignored the whole thing. Turai asked completely like it never happened. That's actually kind of awesome. Most bosses would have made it weird and awkward. She just moved on. But what did she mean by don't waste it on fear? Maybe she's telling you to be bolder at work. Take more risks, professionally. That made sense. It was probably exactly what she meant. Professional advice from a successful businesswoman to her younger employee. Nothing romantic or personal about it at all. So why did I spend another sleepless night thinking about the way she looked at me when she said those words? The next few weeks at Harrington and Associates passed in a strange kind of limbo that I couldn't quite figure out how to navigate. On the surface, everything seemed normal. Evelyn maintained her usual professional distance. I did my work with slightly more confidence than before, and life went on as if the great text message incident of Friday night had never happened. But something had definitely changed, and I couldn't put my finger on exactly what it was. For starters, Evelyn seemed to notice me more. Not in an obvious way that anyone else would pick up on, but in small moments that made my heart skip beats I didn't want to acknowledge. When I presented ideas in team meetings, her attention felt more focused, more engaged. She asked follow-up questions that showed she was actually listening to my suggestions rather than just tolerating them. And then there were the looks. I caught her watching me sometimes when she thought I wasn't paying attention. Not staring exactly, but glancing over with an expression I'd never seen before. Something that seemed almost curious, like she was trying to figure something out about me. It was driving me absolutely crazy. 3 weeks after the text message disaster, Mr. Harrington called an all-hands meeting to announce a new campaign for one of our biggest clients, a luxury hotel chain looking to rebrand their image for younger travelers. It was exactly the kind of project I'd been hoping to work on since I started at the firm. I'm looking for fresh perspectives, Mr. Harrington announced to the conference room full of eager employees. This client wants innovative ideas that will appeal to millennials and Gen Z travelers. I want to see proposals from anyone interested in leading this campaign. My hand shot up before I could second-guess myself. So did about 15 other hands around the room, including some from senior associates who'd been at the firm for years. After the meeting, I was gathering my notes when Evelyn approached my desk. My heart immediately started doing that annoying racing thing it had been doing whenever she was nearby. "Miss Delgado," she said in her usual professional tone, "I'd like to speak with you about the hotel campaign." "Of course, Miss King. My office, please." I followed her to her corner office, trying not to think about the last time I'd been summoned there. She closed the door behind us and gestured for me to sit in the same chair where I'd waited for my professional execution just 3 weeks earlier. "You're interested in leading the Henderson Hotels campaign," she said, settling behind her desk. "Yes, ma'am. I have some ideas that I think could really connect with their target demographic." Such as I took a deep breath and launched into the pitch I'd been developing in my head since Mr. Harrington's announcement. Social media integration, influencer partnerships, experiential marketing events that would create shareable moments. I talked about authenticity and connection, about how younger travelers wanted experiences, not just accommodation. Evelyn listened without interrupting. Those gray eyes focused intently on my face. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "Interesting," she finally said. "You've clearly put thought into this." "I have." "I know I don't have as much experience as some of the senior associates, but I am this demographic," I said. "That's why I understand them. I know exactly what would make me pick one hotel over another." "And what would make you choose?" she asked. "Authenticity," I replied. "Stories." Feeling like the brand actually gets me instead of just shoving a sales pitch in my face. She nodded slowly. "The proposal presentations are scheduled for Friday. I assume you'll be ready." "Absolutely." "Good." She turned back to her computer and I assumed I was being dismissed, but then she glanced up again. Miss Delgado? Yes. That passion I mentioned before, this is what I was talking about. Heat rushed to my cheeks. Thank you, Miss King. Don't thank me yet. Prove it. On Friday, I walked out of her office feeling like my feet weren't quite touching the ground. She believed in me. Evelyn King, the most accomplished woman I'd ever met, thought I had potential. I threw myself into prepping for the presentation with an intensity that bordered on obsession. I dug into everything I could find about the hotel chain, their competition, their past campaigns. I built a full strategy, timelines, projected budgets, and detailed execution plans. By Thursday night, I was still in the office at 9 p.m., fine-tuning slides and rehearsing every line. The building was nearly deserted, just me, the cleaning crew, and a few other work-obsessed stragglers. I was so deep in my work, I didn't notice anyone approaching until I heard her voice. Working late, Miss Delgado? I looked up to see Evelyn standing beside my desk, and my heart immediately launched into its usual chaotic sprint. She'd taken off her suit jacket, and her typically immaculate hair was a little mussed, like she'd been running her fingers through it. She looked more human than I'd ever seen her. Just putting the final touches on tomorrow's presentation, I said, aiming for casual while my pulse did somersaults. May I see what you've prepared? Of course. She stepped around to my side of the desk to look at my screen. Suddenly close enough that I could smell her perfume, subtle, expensive, and distracting in a way that made it hard to remember professional boundaries. As she clicked through my slides, I found myself watching her instead of the deck, the focus in her eyes. The slight crease between her brows when she was thinking. The way her lips pressed together when she was weighing something carefully. This is excellent work, she said after reviewing the entire presentation. Thorough, creative, well-researched. Thank you. I really want to nail this. She turned to look at me and I realized how close we were standing. Close enough that I could see tiny flecks of blue in her gray eyes. Close enough that if I moved just a little bit closer. You will, she said quietly. You have good instincts, Maya. Maya, not Miss Delgado. Maya. The way she said my name did something strange to my insides. Made me feel warm and nervous and excited all at the same time. I should let you finish up, she said, stepping back and returning to her professional distance. Don't stay too much longer. You need to be sharp tomorrow. I one single quotes T. Thank you for looking at it. She nodded and headed back toward her office. I watched her go, noting the way she moved with such confident grace, the way her skirt hugged her hips, the elegant line of her neck above her silk blouse. Then I caught myself staring and forcing my attention back to my computer screen. What was wrong with me? This was my boss, my male boss. I didn't even know if I was attracted to women. And here I was having inappropriate thoughts about Evelyn King, but as I packed up my things and prepared to head home, I couldn't stop thinking about the way she'd said my name or the way those gray eyes had looked when she was standing so close to me. Friday morning arrived with typical Boston weather. Gray skies and a bitter wind that cut through my wool coat like it was matty of tissue paper. I got to the office early, wanting to run through my presentation one more time before the formal presentations. Began at 10 a.m., the conference room was set up with a projector and screen. And there was an energy in the air that felt like opening night of a Broadway show. 6 of us were presenting, including 2 senior associates who'd been at the firm for over 5 years. I was scheduled to go fourth, which meant I had to sit through 3 other presentations while my nerves built to unbearable levels. The first 2 were solid but predictable. Exactly what I expected from experienced advertising professionals. Safe, conservative, boring. The third presentation was from Lydia Park, one of the senior associates I respected most. Her proposal was polished and comprehensive, targeting the exact same demographic as my campaign, but with a more traditional approach. Brand partnerships with established luxury companies, print advertisements in upscale magazines, celebrity endorsements. When my turn came, I stood up on legs that felt like jelly and walked to the front of the room. Mr. Harrington? 3 other senior partners and Evelyn were sitting at the conference table, notepads ready, expressions neutral. I looked directly at Evelyn as I began my presentation, drawing strength from her steady gaze. Henderson Hotels isn't just selling rooms, I said. They're selling experiences, memories, stories that people will share long after their trip is over. I walked them through my entire strategy, explaining how it could transform their social media presence, create shareable moments that would generate organic marketing, and build authentic connections with travelers who valued experience over luxury for its own sake. When I finished, the room was quiet for a moment. Then Mr. Harrington started asking questions, followed by the other partners. Good questions that showed they were taking my proposal seriously. This is quite different from our usual approach, one of the partners said. More risk, but potentially much higher reward. The budget allocation is creative, another added, focusing more on digital engagement and less on traditional advertising. Throughout the questions, Evelyn remained silent, watching me with that unreadable expression. When the session ended and everyone started filing out, she approached me. "Well done," she said simply. "Thank you. I just hope it was enough." It was more than enough. She paused, and for a moment, I thought she was going to say something else. Instead, she simply nodded and walked away. That afternoon, Mr. Harrington called me into his office and offered me the lead position on the Henderson Hotels campaign. My first major project leadership role with a team of 4 people reporting to me and a budget that made my head spin. I was officially moving up in the world. But as I sat in Mr. Harrington's office, accepting congratulations and discussing timelines, all I could think about was the way Evelyn had looked at me when she said, "Well done." Like she was proud of me. Like she'd known all along that I could do it. Like maybe, just maybe, there was something else there too. Leading the Henderson Hotels campaign turned out to be everything I dreamed of, and absolutely nothing like I'd expected. The creative challenge was exhilarating, the pressure was intense, and working closely with Evelyn on a daily basis was slowly driving me insane in ways I was finally starting to acknowledge. My team consisted of Adrian, a graphic designer with an attitude problem and incredible talent. Kira, a social media specialist who understood Instagram algorithms better than I understood basic math. Jonah, a copywriter who could make hotel amenities sound like poetry. And surprisingly, me as the leader trying to coordinate all these moving parts without completely embarrass myself. The first 2 weeks were a whirlwind of brainstorming sessions, client calls, and late nights in the office. Henderson Hotels wanted to launch their rebrand campaign in 6 weeks, which meant we were working under the kind of deadline that made Young slightly crazy and oddly bonded at the same time. Evelyn had taken a more hands-on approach with this campaign than she usually did, which meant frequent check-ins, strategy meetings, and reviews of our progress. She justified it by saying Henderson was one of our most important clients, but I suspected there was more to her increased involvement than client relations. Not that I was complaining. Working closely with her gave me opportunities to see sides of her personality that she kept hidden behind her professional facade. When she was focused on creative problem solving, she became more animated, more passionate. She'd gesture while explaining complex marketing strategies, and her eyes would light up when she hit on a particularly clever idea. It was devastating tummy concentration and probably obvious to anyone who bothered to notice how I looked at her during meetings. 3 weeks into the campaign, we hit our first major obstacle. The client loved our creative direction, but balked at the budget allocation, specifically our emphasis on digital marketing over traditional advertising. They wanted guarantees about reach and engagement that we couldn't provide with innovative approaches. They're scared, I told Evelyn during one of our late-night strategy sessions. It was almost 9 p.m., and the office was empty except for us and the security guard making his rounds. "Of course, they're escorted," she replied, reviewing the client's feedback on her laptop. "They're asking us to spend $3 million on strategies their competition isn't using." Fear is a reasonable response, but that's exactly why it will work. We're not competing with other hotels using the same tried marketing playbook. We're creating something completely different. She looked up at me from her computer, and I felt that familiar flutter in my chest that had become a regular occurrence during our collaboration. So convince them how they want data we don't have because no one's done this kind of integrated campaign before. Then we give them something better than data, which is she closed her laptop and leaned back in her chair, studying me with those gray eyes that seemed to see everything. Passion, conviction. Macathan believe in the vision so strongly that they're willing to take the risk. And if that doesn't work, then we find another way. We always find another way, Maya. There it was again. Niffer's name spoken in that low, confident voice that made my pulse race. Over the past few weeks, she'd started using my first name more often, especially during our private meetings. It felt intimate in a way that professional relationships probably shouldn't feel. I've been thinking, I said, trying to focus on work instead of the way her voice made me feel. What if I created a pilot program, a small-scale version of our campaign for one of their boutique properties in Providence? Low risk, but enough to demonstrate the potential. She tilted her head, considering, go on. We could implement the full strategy for just that one location. Social media integration, influencer partnerships, experiential marketing events. If it works there, they'll have real data to support rolling it out to their major properties. A slow smile spread across her face, and my heart did something that felt dangerously close to stopping Gentry. That's brilliant. You think it could work? I think it's exactly the kind of innovative thinking that will set this campaign apart. She paused, and her expression became more serious. You've exceeded every expectation I had for this project, Maya. Heat flooded my cheeks. Thank you. I've had a good teacher. You've had good instincts. I've just given you permission to trust them. The conversation felt charged with something I couldn't quite name. Professional respect, definitely, but there was an undercurrent of something else. Something that made the air between us feel electric. I should head home, I said, even though I didn't want to end whatever was happening in this moment. Early client call tomorrow. Of course. She gathered her things but made no move to leave. Maya, yes. Have dinner with me tomorrow night. We can discuss the pilot program presentation. My brain short-circuited completely. Dinner? There's a restaurant in Seaport District that I think you'd enjoy. We can work through the details of your proposal without the distractions of the office. It sounded like she was asking me on a date, but she was my boss and she was talking about work, so it was obviously a business dinner, a professional meeting that happened to involve food. So why did my heart feel like it was trying to escape through my throat? That sounds great, I managed to say. Should I make a reservation somewhere? I'll handle it. Meet me here at 7 o'clock and we'll go together. Okay, she walked me to the elevator, which was something she'd never done before. As we waited for it to arrive, the silence between us felt different from our usual professional quiet, more anticipatory, more aware. Good night, Maya, she said as the elevator doors opened. Good night, Evelyn. I used her first name without thinking, and her eyebrows rose slightly in surprise. But she didn't correct me or look displeased. Instead, she smiled that rare, warm smile that I'd only seen a handful of times. The elevator ride down to the parking garage gave me 37 floors to panic about what I'd just agreed to. Dinner with my boss, my beautiful, intimidating boss, who had been occupying way too much of my mental space lately. Was this a date? It couldn't be a date. She was my supervisor. She was a woman. I wasn't even sure if she was interested in women, although something about the way she looked at me lately made me suspect she might be. More importantly, I wasn't entirely sure if I was interested in women, although my reaction to Evelyn was making that question increasingly difficult to avoid. I drove home to my apartment in a daze, replaying every word of our conversation and trying to read meaning into every glance, every pause, every time she'd said my name. By the time I fell asleep that night, I'd convinced myself that it was definitely a business dinner, and I was reading way too much into perfectly normal professional interactions. But I also spent an hour trying on different outfits and decided to wear the dress that made me feel confident and attractive, just in case I was wrong about the purely professional nature of our evening plans. The next day dragged by with the kind of slow torture usually reserved for dental procedures and tax audits. Every time I looked at the clock, it seemed like time had actually moved backwards. I couldn't concentrate on anything except the anticipation of 7 o'clock. At 6:30, I touched up my makeup in the bathroom and checked my reflection one more time. The navy blue dress I'd chosen was professional enough for a business meeting, but flattering enough to be appropriate for something more personal, just in case. I knocked on Evelyn's office door at exactly 7 p.m. and she called for me to come in. She was just finishing up something on her computer, and when she looked up at me, her expression was unreadable. "Ready?" she asked, gathering her purse and coat. Ready. The restaurant she'd chosen was intimate and elegant with dim lighting and small tables that encouraged quiet conversation. It was definitely not the kind of place where normal business dinners happened, and my nerves spiked accordingly. We took a corner table with a view of the city lights, and I pretended to study the menu instead of staring at how stunning she looked in the candlelight. "The salmon is excellent here," she said, scanning her own menu. "And their wine list is quite good." "This is a beautiful place," I said. "Do you come here often?" "Sometimes. It's quite enough to actually talk without the usual restaurant noise." The waiter came by for our drink orders, and Evelyn suggested a wine that probably cost more than my monthly cable bill. In every possible way, I was out of my depth. "So," she said once our glasses had arrived and we'd ordered dinner, "tell me more about this pilot program idea." For the next hour, we went over strategy, logistics, client expectations, and management approaches. But under all the polished professional discussion, there was a different kind of awareness humming between us, one that had nothing to do with marketing plans. The way she leaned in when I spoke, the way her fingers idly traced the rim of her wineglass, the way her gaze lingered on me when she thought I wasn't looking. "You've really thought this through," she said at last, after I finished walking her through the full Providence pilot proposal. "The client will be impressed." "I hope so. This campaign means everything to me." "Why?" The question caught me off guard. "What do you mean? Why does this particular campaign mean everything to you?" She clarified. "It's a strong opportunity, of course, but your investment in it seems deeper than simple career advancement." I took a sip of wine, weighing how honest I was willing to be. "Because it's my chance to prove I belong here," I said finally. "That I'm more than just an eager junior assistant who got lucky." "And do you belong here?" "I think so. I hope so." She studied me in silence for a moment, those sharp gray eyes seeming to look straight through me. "You do," she said. "But not because of this campaign. No, Maya, you belong here because you see possibilities other people overlook. You think differently. You're not afraid to question the standard approach when you believe there's a better one." Her words landed with more force than I expected. "Thank you," I said quietly. "That means more than you know." It's simply the truth. Our dinner arrived, but I barely tasted my food. I was too focused on the woman sitting across from me. The way the candle light played across her features, the way she spoke with such quiet confidence about everything from marketing strategies to her favorite books to her thoughts on living in Boston. It was the most personal conversation we'd ever had, and I found myself hanging on every word. "What about you?" I asked as we were finishing dessert. "What made you choose advertising?" "Control," she said without hesitation. "In advertising, you can shape how people think about products, brands, experiences. You can influence perceptions and create desires. It's a form of power that appeals to me." "That's very honest." "Is it not what you expected me to say?" I expected something about creativity or helping businesses succeed. She smiled, and it was different from her usual professional expression. Warmer, more genuine. Those are lovely side effects. But the real appeal is the ability to create change through strategic influence. "Is that why you're so good at it?" "I'm good at it because I understand people, what motivates them, what they fear, what they desire. Once you understand those things, everything else is just tactics." To the way she said it, looking directly at me, Made me wonder if she was talking about more than just advertising. Made me wonder what she understood about my motivations and fears and desires. What about you, Maya? What do you desire? The question hung in the air between us, loaded with possibilities. I could give a safe, professional answer about career goals and creative fulfillment, or I could tell her the truth about what I'd been thinking every night for weeks. Instead, I went with something in between. I want to matter, I said. I want to do work that changes things, that makes a difference. I want to be someone who takes risks and succeeds because of them, not despite them. And personally, what do you want in your personal life? My heart started racing again. I'm still figuring that out. Are you? There was something in her voice, in the way she was looking at me, that made me think this conversation had moved far beyond professional territory. Some things had become clearer recently, I admitted. Such as, before I could answer, the waiter appeared with our check, and the moment passed. But as we left the restaurant and walked to our cars, I couldn't shake the feeling that something important had almost happened. Thank you for dinner, I said when we reached my car, and for believing in the pilot program idea. Thank you for an excellent evening. She paused, standing close enough that I could smell her perfume again. Maya, yes, you're going to do great things. Don't let fear hold you back. Then she was walking toward her car, and I was standing alone in the parking garage, wondering if we'd been talking about work or something else entirely. The pilot program presentation was scheduled for the following Wednesday, and I'd never been more nervous about anything in my entire professional life. Everything we'd worked for over the past month would be decided in a 60-minute meeting with Henderson Hotels executive team, and I felt the weight of that responsibility pressing down on me like a lead blanket. Evelyn had been increasingly supportive as the presentation date approached, checking in with me daily and offering advice that went beyond professional guidance. There was something different about her attention lately, something more personal and invested than typical supervisor behavior. Tuesday night, I was in the office until almost midnight, obsessively reviewing every slide, every statistic, every transition in our presentation. The building was silent, except for the hum of fluorescent lights and the distant sound of traffic. From the street below, I was so absorbed in my work that I didn't notice someone approaching until I heard her voice. You're going to wear yourself out before the big day. I looked up to find Evelyn standing beside my desk, still in her business, attired despite the late hour. She looked tired but beautiful, and seeing her there sent that familiar flutter through my chest that had become my body's standard response to her presence. Just making sure everything is perfect, I said, gesturing at my computer screen. This has to go flawlessly tomorrow. It will. You've prepared more thoroughly than anyone I've ever worked with. But what if they don't buy it? What if the pilot program idea isn't enough to convince them? She pulled a chair over from the neighboring desk and sat down next to me, close enough that our knees were almost touching. Then we'll find another approach. But Maya, you can't control their decision. You can only control your preparation and your presentation, both of which are exceptional. The way she said my name, soft and reassuring, made me want to lean into her warmth and forget about Henderson Hotels entirely. Instead, I tried to focus on the rational advice she was offering. I keep thinking about what you said at dinner about not letting fear hold me back. It's good advice for more than just work. There was something in her voice that made me look at her more closely. In the dim light of the nearly empty office, she seemed less like the intimidating ice queen I'd been terrified of just months ago, and more like a woman with her own uncertainties and desires. Evelyn, I said, using her first name deliberately. Can I ask you something personal? Of course. Do you ever regret being so controlled all the time, so professional and distant? She was quiet for a long moment, considering the question. Control has served me well in business. It's helped me succeed in an industry that doesn't always welcome women in leadership positions. That's not what I asked. No, it's not, she smiled woefully. Sometimes I wonder what I've missed by maintaining such rigid boundaries. What opportunities? For connection, I've avoided out of fear of appearing unprofessional, and recently I've been questioning whether those boundaries are worth what they've cost me. The conversation felt dangerous and thrilling, like we were approaching territory that could change everything between us. I wanted to push further to ask what she meant specifically, but before I could gather the courage, her phone rang. She glanced at the screen and frowned. I should take this client emergency. I listened to her side of the conversation. Something about a campaign launch being delayed and damage control strategies. When she hung up, she looked frustrated and exhausted. Crisis, I asked. The Harrington campaign for next week has hit a snag. The client wants major revisions to the creative concepts, and we're supposed to present on Friday. That's 3 days away. Exactly, I'll be working around the clock to salvage this situation. Let me help. Maya, you have your own presentation tomorrow. You need to focus on Henderson. After tomorrow, I'll have time. And you said yourself that my preparation is exceptional. Let me contribute to the Harrington campaign once Henderson is handled. She studied my face, and I could see her weighing professionalism against practicality. Are you sure? It would mean very late nights and weekend work. I'm sure we're a team. Right? Yes, she said quietly. We are. Something in the way she said it made my heart skip several beats. Like she was talking about more than just professional partnership. The next morning arrived gray and drizzling, which felt appropriately dramatic for such an important day. I got to the office early and ran through the presentation one final time with my team. Adrian had created visuals that were stunning. Kira had developed social media mock-ups that looked incredibly engaging. And Jonah had written copy that perfectly captured the voice we wanted for Henderson Hotels. At 2 p.m., we gathered in the conference room with the Henderson executive team. 3 men and 2 women, all impeccably dressed and radiating the kind of confidence that comes from controlling multi-million-dollar budgets. Evelyn introduced our team and our proposal, then turned the floor over to me. For a moment looking at those 5 expectant faces, I felt panic rise in my throat. Then I caught Evelyn's eye, and she gave me an almost imperceptible nod of encouragement. I began with the pilot program concept, explaining how we could test our innovative strategies on a smaller scale before implementing them across Henderson's entire portfolio. I walked them through our research, our creative concepts, our budget projections, and our timeline for execution. My team supported me perfectly, jumping in with technical details and creative explanations when needed. Adrian presented his visual concepts with the kind of passion that made even hotel amenities look exciting. Kara explained how our social media strategy would create organic engagement that traditional advertising couldn't match. Jonah read sample copy that brought our brand voice to life. For 45 minutes, we were flawless. Then came the questions. This approach is quite different from what we've done before, said the lead executive, a woman named Camila Reyes. How can you guarantee the results you're promising? We can't guarantee specific numbers, I admitted, but we can guarantee authenticity. An engagement that will differentiate Henderson from every other hotel chain using traditional marketing approaches. That's not very reassuring from a financial perspective, said one of the men. But it's honest, Evelyn interjected, speaking for the first time since her introduction. And honesty is exactly what today's travelers are looking for from brands they choose to support. The questions continued for another 20 minutes, some supportive, others skeptical. When it was over, Camila Reyes shook hands with each of us. We'll need time to review everything and discuss it among our team, she said. We'll have an answer for you by Friday. After the Henderson team left, my own team gathered in the conference room for a debriefing. Everyone agreed that we presented our best work, but the client's response had been difficult to read. I think we did great, Kira said. Even the tough questions felt more like due diligence than rejection. The visuals landed perfectly, Adrian added. You could see them imagining how those concepts would look in their properties. Now we wait, Jonah concluded, and pray to whatever marketing gods might be listening. As my team dispersed, Evelyn approached me. You were exceptional in there. Thank you. I couldn't have done it without everyone's support. I'm not talking about the team effort, though. That was excellent, too. I'm talking about your leadership, your composure under pressure, your ability to handle their skepticism without getting defensive. Pride and relief flooded through me in equal measure. It felt good. Scary, but good. That's exactly how the best challenges should feel. She paused and her expression became more personal. Maya, regardless of what Henderson decides, you've proven yourself on this project. You've grown tremendously as a professional and as a person. The question slipped out before I could stop myself, more personal than I'd intended. I couldn't help wondering what she saw when she looked at me now, what changes she'd noticed that had nothing to do with my job performance. Yes, she said quietly, as a person too. Before I could ask her what she meant, Mr. Harrington appeared in the doorway, looking frazzled and overwhelmed. Evelyn, I need to talk to you about the Harrington Industries crisis. It's worse than I thought. She sighed and began gathering her things. The other campaign emergency, she murmured to me. This is going to be a long night. Remember my offer to help once Henderson was settled? I might take you up on that. As she walked out with Mr. Harrington, a strange hollowness settled in my chest, despite how well the presentation had gone. The rush of adrenaline faded, leaving only fatigue and a nervous uncertainty about what came next. That evening, I tried to unwind at home, but focusing on anything was impossible. Every time my phone buzzed, I prayed it was an early update from Henderson, but it was just my sister checking in or Tori asking how the presentation went. Around 9 p.m., my phone rang with an internal office number. Maya, it's Evelyn. Are you busy? Not at all, I said quickly. How's the Harrington crisis? Badly, she admitted. We've been at this for 6 hours and we're not getting anywhere. I know you offered to help, but I hate to ask after the day you've already had. I meant it, I said. Let me help. Are you sure? It could be a very late night. I'll be there in 30 minutes. When I got back to the office, I found her in the conference room, surrounded by printouts, open laptops, and empty coffee cups. She looked worn out but resolute, her usually immaculate hair slightly mussed, and her blazer hanging over the back of a chair. What's the situation? I asked, taking a seat across from her. For the next hour, she walked me through the tangle of client demands, PR concerns, and unforgiving deadlines. Harrington Industries wanted to completely overhaul their brand, messaging while maintaining their existing visual identity, and they needed a full campaign proposal in 3 days. So we're essentially creating an entirely new campaign from scratch. I summarized in 72 hours over a weekend with a client who's already frustrated with our original concepts. Okay, what do you need me to do? What followed was one of the most intense work sessions of my life. We divided responsibilities and attacked the project from multiple angles, brainstorming concepts and refining messages until my brain felt like overcooked pasta. Around midnight, we took a break to order food from the only restaurant still delivering to downtown Boston offices. While we waited for our Thai takeout, Evelyn leaned back in her chair and rubbed her temples. Thank you for staying to help with this mess. Thank you for letting me. It's nice to feel useful when everything feels uncertain. Henderson will say yes, she said with conviction. How can you be sure? Because your presentation was exactly what they needed, even if they're too conservative to recognize it immediately. Sometimes clients need time to catch up with innovative thinking. And if they say no, then we'll find you another opportunity to lead a major campaign. Your talent doesn't disappear based on one client's decision. Her confidence in me was both reassuring and attractive in a way that made it difficult to maintain professional focus. When our food arrived, we ate while continuing to work, and I found myself watching her more than was strictly appropriate. The way she gestured when she was excited about an idea. The way she pushed her hair back when she was concentrating. The way she looked at me when I suggested something she liked. By 3 a.m., we developed a solid foundation for the Harrington campaign, and exhaustion was making us both slightly punchy. I think we should call it a night, Evelyn said, saving our work and closing our laptop. We can continue tomorrow evening. This evening? You mean it's already tomorrow? She laughed and the sound was tired but genuine. God, we're going to feel terrible in a few hours. We packed up our materials and headed toward the elevators together. The building was silent except for our footsteps on the polished floors. "Evelyn," I said as we waited for the elevator, "thank you for trusting me with this project. I know you could have handled it alone or asked one of the senior associates to help. I wanted your perspective. You see things differently than people who've been in this industry for years. That's valuable. Is that the only reason?" The question hung between us, and I immediately regretted asking it. But I was exhausted and emotionally raw from the day's intensity, and I needed to know if her attention was purely professional. She turned to look at me, and in the dim hallway lighting, her gray eyes seemed to hold depths I'd never noticed before. "No," she said quietly, "it's not the only reason." Before I could ask what she meant, the elevator arrived, and the moment passed. But as we rode down together in silence, I felt like something fundamental had shifted between us. Something that had nothing to do with advertising campaigns and everything to do with the way she looked at me when she admitted that her reasons for wanting my help were more than professional. Friday morning brought news that felt like winning the lottery and getting struck by lightning simultaneously. Camila Reyes from Henderson Hotels called at 9 a.m. to inform us that they loved our pilot program proposal and wanted to move forward immediately. Not just with the Providence test, but with a full rollout across 3 of their major properties. It was everything I'd hoped for and more than I dared to expect. The celebration in our conference room was brief but energetic with my team. Exchanging high fives and Mr. Harrington making comments about innovative thinking and the future of the firm. Evelyn stood slightly apart from the group, watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. When everyone else had returned to their desks, she approached me. "Congratulations," she said, and her smile seemed genuinely warm. "You've earned this. We've earned this. I couldn't have done it without your guidance and support. Your success reflects your own talents, Maya. Don't diminish that." Before I could respond, she was called away for another crisis meeting about the Harrington campaign, which we'd worked on until 3 a.m., but still needed significant development before Monday's deadline. The rest of Friday was a blur of client calls, budget meetings, and timeline planning for the Henderson campaign. It should have been the best professional day of my life, but I found myself distracted by thoughts of Evelyn and the way she'd looked at me in the elevator the night before. No, it's not the only reason. What had she meant? And why do I care so much about her answer? That evening, I returned to the office to continue working on the Harrington crisis. The building was nearly empty again, just a few dedicated workaholics and the security staff. I found Evelyn in her office, surrounded by the familiar chaos of urgent projects and impossible deadlines. "How long have you been here?" I asked, noticing the empty coffee cups and crumpled papers that suggested she'd been working nonstop since 7 this morning. "How was your Henderson celebration?" "Brief. I figured you could use help finishing Harrington." She looked up at me with an expression that was grateful and something else. "You don't need to keep doing this, Maya. You've already proven yourself beyond any doubt. I'm not doing this to prove anything anymore." Then why? I could have given her a safe answer about teamwork and professional development. Instead, exhaustion and emotion made me honest because I want to. Because working with you on these late-night projects is the best part of my job. Because I care about your success as much as my own. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her processing what I just admitted. The air between us felt charged with possibility and danger. "Maya, I know it's unprofessional to care this much about your boss's opinion." "That's not what I was going to say. What were you going to say?" She stood up from behind her desk and walked over to where I was standing by the door. Close enough that I could smell her perfume. Close enough that I could see the exhaustion in her eyes and something else that looked almost like longing. I was going to say that the feeling is mutual. My heart stopped. Actually stopped. "What? Your success matters to me beyond professional investment. Working with you these past months has been," she paused, seeming to search for the right words. "It's been the most engaging and rewarding collaboration of my career." "Evelyn, I know this is complicated." I know there are professional boundaries and power dynamics that make this situation difficult to navigate. Are we talking about work anymore? No, she said softly. We're not. The admission hung between us like a bridge we could either cross or turn away from. I could feel my pulse racing, could see the slight rise and fall of her chest as she breathed, could sense that we were approaching a moment that would change everything. I should probably leave, I said, even though leaving was the last thing I wanted to do, probably, but neither of us moved. We stood there in her office looking at each other while the city lights twinkled through her floor-to-ceiling windows. Both of us aware that we were on the edge of crossing a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Maya, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Yes, if you stay, we can't pretend this is just about work anymore. And if I leave, then we pretend tonight never happened and we go back to being boss and employee. The choice was impossible and obvious at the same time. Professional safety versus the possibility of something extraordinary. The smart decision versus the one my heart was screaming for me to make. I stepped closer instead of backing away. I'm staying. Her eyes searched my face, looking for uncertainty or hesitation. Whatever she saw there must have satisfied her because she reached up and touched my cheek with gentle fingers. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. When she kissed me, it was soft and tentative at first, a question, rather than a statement. I answered by kissing her back, by stepping even closer until there was no space left between us, by threading my fingers through her perfectly styled hair. She tasted like coffee and possibilities, like everything I hadn't known I wanted until this moment. When we finally broke apart, both of us breathing heavily, she rested her forehead against mine. This changes everything, she said. I know, your career, my reputation, office dynamics, everything. I know. Are you prepared for that? I thought about it seriously, considering all the complications and potential consequences. Then I looked into those gray eyes that had been haunting my thoughts for months. Yes, are you? Instead of answering with words, she kissed me again, deeper this time with a passion that erased any doubt about her feelings. When her hands tangled in my hair and pulled me closer, I felt like I was falling and flying at the same time. We managed to separate long enough for her to close and lock her office door. Then she was back in my arms, and I was learning the taste of her neck, the sound she made when I kissed the sensitive spot behind her ear, the way her breath caught when I whispered her name. Maya, she said against my lips. We should talk about this later, I murmured, trailing kisses along her jawline. We can talk about everything later. The implications, the complications later. She pulled back just enough to look at me, and her expression was serious despite the desire I could see in her eyes. I need you to understand something. What? This isn't just physical attraction for me. The way I feel about you, it's more than that. My heart did something that felt like expanding to fill my entire chest. How do you feel about me? Like I've been waiting for you without knowing it. Like you've woken up parts of myself, I thought. I buried under professional ambition, like I'm falling in love with you despite every logical reason why I shouldn't. The confession was so honest and vulnerable that it took my breath away. Evelyn King, the Ice Queen of Boston advertising, was telling me she was falling in love with me. I love you too, I said, the words spilling out before I could second guess them. I've been falling in love with you for months, and I was terrified to admit it even to myself. She kissed me again, softer this time, like she was savoring the moment. What are we going to do? I don't know, but we'll figure it out together. We spent the next hour talking and kissing in equal measure, exploring this new dynamic between us, while also acknowledging the challenges it would create. She opened up about her fierce office romances, whispers about reputations, the risk of everything she'd spent years building. I told her about my own confusion, how unsure I'd been about my sexuality, and how intimidating it was to work for someone like her. I've never been with a woman before, I confessed. As we sat together on the couch in her office, her arm around my shoulders, my head resting against her. Does that worry you? She asked. A little. I said. But mostly I'm just excited to figure this out with you. We can go as slowly as you need. What if I don't want to go slowly? She laughed, a lighter, softer sound than I'd ever heard from her. Then we won't, she said. By around midnight, reality started to seep back in. On Monday, we'd still have to show up at the same office. We still had coworkers, clients, deadlines. None of that was going to vanish just because we'd admitted how we felt. People are going to notice, I said, voicing the worry we'd both been tiptoeing around. Probably, she agreed. Are you ready for that? Are you? I countered. You've got more to lose than I do. I have more to gain, too. She tilted my chin gently, so I had to meet her eyes. Maya, I've spent my whole career being careful, controlled, professional, she said. It's given me success, but it's also left me incredibly lonely. If being with you means risking some of that distance, I think it's worth it. Even if people say you're showing me favoritism, let them, she replied. Your work stands on its own. The Henderson campaign proved that more than anything I could say. We went through potential scenarios, talking honestly about how to handle our relationship at work. We agreed to be discreet without pretending it didn't exist, to stay professional, without reverting to coldness, to be honest but thoughtful about when and with whom we shared the truth. It felt surreal sitting there mapping out the logistics of a workplace relationship with the same woman, who had terrified me just months before. But with her arms still wrapped around me, planning for the future with careful hope, it also felt exactly right. I should go home, I finally said as the clock approached 1 a.m. We both need sleep before facing the office on Monday. You could stay. The offer was tempting, incredibly tempting, but I knew she was right about taking things carefully, about not letting passion override judgment. I'd like that, but maybe not on our first night. She walked me to the elevator, and we kissed goodbye like teenagers with a curfew, reluctant to separate, even though we'd see each other in just a few hours. Maya, she said as the elevator doors started to close. Yes, thank you for staying. Tonight, for taking this risk with me. Thank you for being worth the risk. I drove home through empty Boston streets, my mind racing with everything that had happened. I was in love with my boss, my female boss. The most intimidating woman I'd ever met had just told me she was falling in love with me, too. It should have felt terrifying. Instead, it felt like coming home. 6 months later, I stood in the conference room at Harrington and Associates, presenting our latest campaign results to a room full of executives and clients. The Henderson Hotel's pilot program had exceeded every projection, leading to a full partnership that had become one of our firm's most successful accounts. I've been promoted to senior account manager, leading a team of 8 people on multiple high-profile campaigns. But the most significant change in my life had nothing to do with professional advancement. Evelyn sat at the conference table listening to my presentation with the same professional attention she gave all business meetings. But when our eyes met across the room, I saw something in her gray gaze that was meant only for me. Love, pride, and a warmth that still made my heart skip beats even after months of seeing it. We'd learned to navigate our relationship with careful professionalism during office hours. No one could accuse her of favoritism regarding my career progression because my work continued to speak for itself. I'd led 3 major campaigns to successful completion, brought in 2 new clients through innovative proposals, and earned the respect of colleagues who initially saw me as just another junior assistant. After the meeting ended and clients had filed out, Evelyn approached me with feedback that was appropriately professional and encouragingly positive. Excellent presentation, Maya. The client seemed very pleased with the quarterly results. Thank you. The team has been working incredibly hard to exceed their expectations. It was the kind of exchange we'd perfected over months of practice, appropriate for public consumption, but meaningful in ways that only we understood. That evening, we met at our apartment in Back Bay. Yes, our apartment. After 3 months of careful dating and getting to know each other outside the office, we decided to move in together. It was a decision that felt natural and right, despite The professional complications it could create if the wrong people found out. How was your day, Miss King? I asked as she hung up her coat and kicked off her heels. Long and profitable, Miss Delgado. How was yours? This had become our ritual. Formal address when we walked through the door, then gradual transition into our real selves as the day's professional personas fell away. Much better now that you're home. She smiled and pulled me into her arms for a proper hello kiss. After 6 months, the electricity between us hadn't dimmed at all. If anything, learning to know her completely had made me love her more intensely than I'd thought possible. I have news, she said, settling beside me on our couch with a glass of wine. Good news or bad news? Potentially life-changing news, Mr. Harrington is retiring next year, and the partners are considering me for the executive director position. I nearly choked on my wine. Evelyn, that's incredible. You'd essentially be running the entire firm. I'd be running the entire firm, which means she paused and her expression became more serious, which means we'd need to be even more careful about our relationship becoming public knowledge, at least until I'm established in the role. It wasn't. The first time we discussed the challenges of our situation, dating your boss was complicated enough. Dating the future head of the company created an entirely different level of professional complexity. Are you worried? I asked about getting the position. No, about maintaining our relationship while navigating that level of professional scrutiny. Yes, I understood her concern. We've been lucky so far. A few colleagues suspected we were closer than typical supervisor and employee, but no one had outright questioned the nature of our relationship. That might change if Evelyn became the most powerful person in the firm. We could always make it official, I said carefully. Let people know that we're together, that our relationship is serious and professional. Coming out at work, you mean? It was a conversation we'd had before, but never fully resolved. I was completely comfortable with my sexuality now, confident in my love for Evelyn and my identity as a woman who happened to love another woman. But she'd spent decades building her professional reputation on control and distance, and being open about a same-sex relationship felt risky to her. I know it's complicated, I said. I just hate feeling like we're hiding something we should be proud of. I'm not ashamed of loving you, Maya. I know, but are you proud of it? She sat down her wine and turned to face me fully. I'm proud of everything about our relationship. The way you challenge me intellectually. The way you make me laugh. The way you've helped me become a more complete person. I'm proud that you chose me despite having every reason to find someone less complicated. But I'm also protective of what we've built together. Coming out at work changes things. It subjects our relationship to scrutiny and judgment that I'm not sure I'm prepared for. I could understand her perspective, even if I didn't entirely agree with it. She'd worked twice as hard as her male colleagues to reach her current position. And she was right that adding personal controversy could complicate her path to executive director. What if we waited, I suggested, until after your promotion is confirmed, until you're established in the role? You'd be willing to do that for you? For us, yes. She leaned over and kissed me softly. Have I mentioned lately that I love you? Not in the last hour or so. I love you, Maya Delgado, more than I thought I was capable of loving anyone. We spent that evening talking through various scenarios and timelines for potentially being more open about our relationship. It felt like planning a campaign, which made sense given that we were both marketing professionals who believed in strategic communication. Around 10 p.m., we were cuddled on the couch watching a documentary about advertising history when Evelyn's phone rang. It's Camila Reyes, she said, glancing at the screen. From Henderson Hotels. She answered the call and I listened to her side of what seemed like an increasingly positive conversation. When she hung up, she was grinning. They want to expand our partnership, she announced. They're opening 4 new properties next year, and they want us to handle the complete marketing strategy for all of them. Evelyn, that's enormous. It's enormous enough that Camila specifically requested you as the lead account manager. She said you're the most innovative marketing strategist she's worked with in 20 years. Pride and excitement flooded through me in equal measure. A year ago, I'd been a junior assistant, terrified of making eye contact with my boss. Now I was being specifically requested by major clients for leadership roles. I couldn't have done any of this without you. I told her you could have, and you would have, maybe not as quickly, but your talent was always there. I just gave you opportunities to show it. You gave me confidence to trust my instincts. You gave me reasons to believe in innovative thinking. We were both quiet for a moment, reflecting on how much had changed since that mortifying Friday night when I'd accidentally sent her the most embarrassing text message of my life. Do you remember what you wrote in that text? Evelyn asked, apparently thinking along the same lines. How could I forget? If I ever fall in love again, I hope it's not with my boss. And what did I say back? Then fall properly. She smiled and pulled me closer. Did you fall properly? I thought about it seriously. The fear I'd felt that weekend convinced my career was over. The gradual development of friendship and respect between us. The professional challenges that had brought us closer together. The moment in her office when we'd finally acknowledged what had been building for months. The careful navigation of a relationship that defied conventional workplace wisdom. I felt completely, I said, professionally, personally, emotionally. I fell for your intelligence and your passion and your unexpected warmth. I fell for the way you challenged me to be better than I thought I could be. I fell for the woman behind the intimidating professional facade. And now I'm planning to keep falling as properly as possible for as long as you'll let me. She kissed me then deep and passionate and full of promise for our future together. When we broke apart, both of us breathing heavily, she rested her forehead against mine forever. If I have any say in the matter. Is that a proposal? It's a promise. The proposal will come later when I can plan something worthy of the woman who changed my entire life with an accidentally sent text message. I love you, Evelyn King. I love you too, Maya Delgado, and I'm grateful every day that you fell properly right into my life. 1 year later, we made our relationship official at Harrington and Associates. Evelyn had been promoted to executive director. I'd been promoted to VP of Creative Strategy, and we decided that our professional success spoke for itself, regardless of who we chose to love. The reaction was overwhelmingly positive. Colleagues who'd suspected something between us for months were happy to have their intuitions confirmed. Clients who had worked with both of us started pointing to our relationship as proof of the firm's genuinely collaborative culture. And the few people who took issue with either our same-sex relationship or the fact that it began at work quickly discovered that our results spoke far louder than their personal discomfort ever could. The best response, though, came from Camila Reyes at Henderson Hotels. She sent us a congratulations card that said, "You two are proof that the strongest professional partnerships sometimes turn into the best personal ones. Thank you for showing our brand what authentic connection really looks like. Sometimes the right person doesn't just catch you when you fall. Sometimes they teach you how to fall properly, how to hit the ground without fear, how to trust that someone will be there to help you back up when you need it. And every so often, if you're incredibly lucky, that person becomes your partner in every way that matters, professionally, personally, and everywhere in between. I learned that love isn't always a mistake, even when it shows up in the most unlikely situation with the most unexpected person. Sometimes love is exactly what you need to finally become who you were meant to be, even if it begins with the most mortifying text message you've ever sent." This story reminds us that our worst-seeming blunders can turn into our greatest opportunities, and that falling in love properly means being brave enough to hand someone your whole heart. Have you ever had a moment that felt like a disaster, but transformed into something beautiful? Share it in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring stories of unexpected love and personal growth. And don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring stories of unexpected love and personal growth. Sometimes the best things in life happen when we're courageous enough to fall properly